I was born at home at Weinert, Texas. And we didn't have streets then, just Weinert, Texas. And I was born October the 12th, 1927. I remember one granddad. He was a farmer, and out in, I guess it was West Texas, and he farmed with mules. I remember when we'd go see him, he had a bunch of mules, and I asked him what he did. Well, they worked for me. And he died when I was on the way back from overseas. Andrew Jackson Spratlin. My daddy's name was Willie Lafayette Johnson. My mother's name was Irene Ludine Johnson. And my dad, he had leased a ranch and ranched. He had a service station and a garage. He had the dray line. He bought wheat. He bought cattle. And he had a little business. He wound up in the laundry business. He had a 6th grade education, and his daddy died, and his mother remarried. So he kicked Daddy out when he was 10 years old. So Daddy worked at the Stanford Inn in Stanford, Texas, washed dishes when he was 10 years old. So my dad worked hard all of his life. He had leased a section of land in close to Stafford Lake, and part of it now is in Stafford Lake, and he leased it and had I forgot how many head of cattle, but it's back in the 30s when Roosevelt come into the presidency, and he had a program that they paid the ranchers and farmers to shoot some cattle and just leave them lie. Don't eat them or don't do anything. Just let them rot. And so he did that. And I was with him. He burned these cactus, burned the stickers off of them. Looked like a flamethrower. And the old cows would come by and eat those things while it's hot. They loved them. And so then he moved from there back to Weinert, Texas, and he had a garage and a service station. And he had this old pump, and I think a gallon of gas then was 16 cents. He made money for a while, he really did. He did good for 6th grade. He raised 3 boys anyway. Willie Tom Johnson is my oldest brother, and Jack Allen Johnson, my second brother. They're both dead. Now, if you notice, my daddy's name was Willie, and Debbie, my oldest brother, was Willie. Well, I named myself Willie for this reason. I was trying to join the Navy when I was 17, and I went up there and they said, you have to have a birth certificate. Well, at the courthouse in Haskell, the doctor didn't file one. So she said, well, is the doctor still living? I said, yeah. So anyway, she gave me a form, and I went back to Dr. Cadenhead, James F. Cadenhead. And he filled it out. I took it back. It had Russell Johnson. I said, well, what's your first name? I said, Russell. What's your second? Well, I just have 2 names, Russell Johnson. No, we can't issue a birth certificate. You got to have 3 names. I said, okay, put down Willie Russell. So I named myself Willie. And then somehow I didn't go to the Navy then. My dad told me when I was in school, he said, son, you're having the most fun you're ever going to have in your life. And I think he was right. But it wasn't anything to do. There wasn't drugs there. There wasn't, I don't know, I just had a lot of fun in school. And we went, fishing, hunting, and so forth. And of course, when boys got 13 or 14, they went girl hunting. So anyway, I had a big time in growing up in Weinert, Texas. I wasn't an A student in anything, I don't think. But anyway, I got out of school. When I got out of high school, which was in May of 1945. My best friend and I enrolled at North Texas State University in Denton, Texas, North Texas State College then. And so the World War was still going on, or they hadn't declared an end of it yet. So I was drafted in December of 1945. I was one of the last 5 to be drafted out of Haskell County for World War II. I went to Camp Crowder, did my basic. They shipped me from Camp Crowder, Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, to a radio school. This dot. Boy, it just like drove me crazy. I went to the company commander. I said, "Sir, I just don't like this radio school. I want to go overseas or something." Yeah. He said, "Well, you want to go overseas?" "Yeah, I want to go overseas." "So, okay. Well, you know what you're saying?" I said, "Yes, sir." So they shipped me to Korea. And I was on the ship about 17 days. It went over. A lot of us got seasick, too. It was called a Victory ship. And at the time, I thought that was the biggest ship. It was the biggest ship I'd ever seen, and it was just a small Victory ship. I was over there about a year, and then they shipped me back. I think the Army did me good. It'll make a kid grow up. It really will. And I did a lot of growing up there. A couple of buddies of mine, we were driving around the big city of Wynert, which it don't take long to drive around it. But high school let out, and she was walking home from high school. And I said, "Well, how about me taking you home?" "I know." And she told me later, "You had 3 boys. I wasn't about to get in the car." So anyway, I just sort of passed that on, and then that was probably in July or August or something of 47. And so over at Matson was a little country school, and I went over one November. My best buddy, Raymond Pickering, I went over there, and she was playing volleyball over Wynert against Matson. And I said, "Well, hey, I met you the other day." "Yeah, I know. How about me taking you home?" "No, we have to ride. If we come over here on the school bus, we got to ride back." "Well, you gonna get off school bus at Wynert, aren't you?" "Yeah." "Well, can I pick you up there and take you home?" "Well, yeah." So I did, and that was the beginning of it. And that was probably November or October of 47. And we got married then in July of 48. She was 17. We got married in July, and then she turned 18 in November. And I was 20. And I turned 21 in October. So we was pretty, for all practical purposes, 17 and 20. My dad had combines at the time. He had a job combining some maize for Preston Wynert, and he was a descendant of the guy that Wynert was after. I think he was the son. And that was a sting in this maize. I don't know whether you know anything about maize, but it has a shaft. Some of it stung and some of it didn't. And I stung. I climbed off that combine. So I said, "Dad, I think I'll just go to school. I got the GI Bill." He grinned. I can still see his blue eyes. I said, "I figured you would." We got married in July of 48, and I started school at Hardin Simmons University in September of 48. And I got off 4 years' work in 2 years and 3 months. So I worked in 40 hours a week. And college wasn't fun to me. It wasn't near like high school. So it was a drudgery, really, because Sue she had a hard time delivering our oldest son. She's in bed about 3 or 4 months. And anyway, I had it tough, or at least I thought it was. I graduated from Hardin Simmons in January of 1951. I found a job with a public accountant, W.E. Cook. I made $95.30 twice a month. That was my take-home pay. My salary was $200 a month. And then I found me another job in Sherman after about 6 months or 8 months or a year, I forgot now, for $250 a month. That was with Day Manufacturing Company. And Luther Acton Day was the owner. But I was just miserable with them after a while. I mean, I was their errand boy. I went and grocery shopped. I did yard work. Everything that they could save money on, they'd hire me. And they'd hired me as a box salesman. So I joined the Air Force. So I took my physical, and he wouldn't pass me because I've always had a bad left eye. It's bad. I can barely see out of it. And he said, well, I can't pass you. Why? I said, the Army did. I don't care. I can't pass you. I said, I've already quit my job. That's tough. He was a regular you-know-what. So I was out of a job, and then I sure didn't have any money. So we hooked him over to Fort Worth, and I got a job with Container Corporation of America. And I went from $250 to $300 a month. Man, I was in tall cotton then. And I worked for them for about 53 to 1960, about 7 or 8 years. And at that time, I'd met a guy there, Charlie Driscoll. He was my first partner in the insurance. We tried to borrow $15,000 from the banks to go into the paper box manufacturing business. They wouldn't loan us nothing. So anyway, let's see, I believe February of '59, I believe he went in business for himself. So my plan was always quit and join him. I couldn't get a job anywhere but the insurance, and I wanted to be in business for myself. I called him one day. I said, Charlie, about ready for me to come over? Well, no. Russ, we better wait a while. I'm not selling anything. I said, well, it's too late. I just quit. I've been in the business really since 1959. I got my license in 1960. I got my life license in 1959, but I got my agency license in 1960. So I've been in it ever since. I moved to Bedford in February of 1958. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, central heat, not central air, wooded lot and a beautiful lot for $10,000. And that was February of 1958. Then I moved to Hurst in January the 1st, 1960. I bought another house about the same size, a little bigger, and it was 11 or 12,000. January the 1st, 1960, I moved to Hurst. It was probably 19,000, and that's a good guess. Bell Helicopter was the guts of it, and Bell Helicopter's in Fort Worth. Of course, that's some of the big boys doing downtown. They zoned the strip right down. Fort Worth wanted it, so they got it. But Hurst enjoyed the benefits of the people working there. So it was just a helicopter town, and it had a few. When I come out here, I think there was one grocery store, maybe one supermarket, if you could term it that. And that was Worth Food Market. And then there was another one, wasn't a supermarket, but 2 grocery stores and a few service stations. Wasn't any, all this out here right now I'm looking at. It's farmland. People hunted out here. There was hog farms and everything else. Bob George, he had a grocery store up here. I said it wasn't many grocery stores. His was one of them. But it was a little family-owned grocery store. It was by any means, it sure wasn't a supermarket. But that was when people come in, charge stuff. George, you got a gallon of milk? Charge. He'd write down, and then these little sales slips or books Each one of them wrote on top, Russell Johnson. Then put that in there, and he'd get your charge deal there. You're supposed to pay at the end of the month when you go by and pay it. Bob was an old timer of Hearst. I don't know when he moved out here, but he was 20 years older than me. Jack Clark up here on Pipeline Road at the time, he's a drive-in. So I know a friend of mine, Bob Jones, had Arc Electric Company, and he had a couple of daughters, and they were horse crazy, like so many people. They had horses, so they'd ride their horse up and order a hamburger or something. Jack Clark got a kick out of that. And he was a hamburger guy. And I solicited his insurance business for years. And finally, he built a Jack Clark number 2 on Bedford Euless Road. Jack said, okay, I'm going to flip a coin. Whoever wins the flip can write this business on Jack Clark number 2. And he flipped it, and this guy said, well, call it, Russell. I called tails. It was $50, and tails come up. So I won the account by a flip of a coin with Jack Clark. Everybody's in business went to Polly's Diner, and they transacted a lot of business at Polly's Diner. And Charlie and I went up there, and we'd always sell with some builder's wrist, or we'd sell something. I remember some funny things happened. Let me go back just a little before that. This is about my first partner. He was out here before I was, and he joined the volunteer fire department. We joined different things so we could meet people. So they had a fire one day up here on Pipeline Road, about Pipeline and this side of Brown Trail. And I mean, it was a forest fire. It was on fire. Fire truck kept running up there. Charlie was I think he was driving the fire truck. An old man out there stopped him with a shotgun, just cussing. Y'all are not going there putting that, Mr. So-and-so, there's a fire. I know it, I'll set the fire. I'm tired of these dang ticks. So I'm burning those ticks. I'm going to burn them. So they just backed the fire truck out and let the fire go. And then that same deal, they went to a fire, and they reported to west end of East Pipeline or something like that. Anyway, they got the direction mixed up. They went the wrong way and turned around. They found out they'd dropped 200 foot of hose along the road. It was a young junior chamber of commerce that when you got 35, you weren't eligible. You had to get out, and you couldn't join it if you was over 35 or older. So we did a lot of civic deals. We built a park. I believe it's J.C. Baker Park up here on the highway, off the highway, up in Hearst Hills. And that was a project lasted a good while. We went up there, and we worked a lot of Saturday mornings on that park. And then we had different projects. We sold Halloween candy, and back in those days they had a deal, traffic stop, promote traffic safety on Labor Day, and we set up coffee stops, and gave free coffee and donuts to the people that pull in there, and we'd try to arrest them a little bit where they wouldn't have a wreck. I was second president of JC's out here. Orville Sloan was the first one, and that was in 1960 and 61, I believe. I was a charter member of the Rotary Club too, and that's a little more dignified club, and it's the money operates there instead of you didn't have to work as much. So, and that's really a good club too. It's a lot of guys in there that's been there for years and years. We gave a lot of money to different to different clubs and stuff that needed the money. That was the main thing that the Rotary Club did, was things financially. We recently, I say recently, a couple of years ago, I guess, maybe 3, it was a 50-year celebration for them. About the only fun we had, I guess, just going out and eating with people and visiting. And I'm trying to remember, TV has changed a lot of people's lives, as you know. My first TV was, I lived in Fort Worth. It was a little 17-inch Admiral. But anyway, that'd come on more and more, and that cut out a lot of visiting. We used to visit, even when we had TV, they had 2 stations, or 3, I think, and it just wasn't that much to see. So we'd go visit our people, our kinfolks. If her folks lived in Fort Worth and mine lived out in Wyandotte. And then that's about the size of it. We just had some fun visiting, I guess. That's, come to think about it, that's all we did. I was taking stuff from Hearst, making a living in Hearst. I'd want to give something back. So I gave my time, and that's a lot of time in Hearst. So I was elected. I had an opponent. He was an architect. I beat him in the race. And that's in 64, his 2-year term. And then I was mayor pro tem for Herman Smith. Herman Smith was mayor. So then the next term in 66, I ran for mayor, and it was the first time that the Hearst people voted for mayor. Up to that time, the council elected the mayor from one of the council members. So I was, I guess, the first elected mayor by the people of Hearst. So, and I didn't have any competition then, I guess. I don't know why, but when Ward Drugstore opened up here on Pipeline, we cut the ribbons with a helicopter. You know, and I was mayor, and I got to go down there and cut that ribbon with these fake scissors on this helicopter and run through that thing. That was a lot of fun. And then they took me around the Hearst, and first time and only time, I guess, I've ever been in a helicopter. The first, the City Hall, you know, the one that's been remodeled since then, but I was mayor when we built that. And I remember making the speech out there. I never was a good speech maker. So, but anyway, we made that. And people thought it was just sort of a funny looking building. It was round, you know, on the top. But anyway, it served its purpose. We'd be having meetings at night, and I don't know whether it still does or not, but the lights would go dim for a second, and then they'd go back. And we had electricians out there, and they couldn't figure out what it was. And when I left mayor, they still had that. I don't know whether they still have it now or not. Then we had another peculiar, well, it wasn't peculiar, it's a situation, the Hearst Rescue Unit. Jack Earl. Jack worked at Bell Helicopter, and he was, siren happy, okay, that's a good day for it. So he'd come up and run down these roads, raining 40, he'd come 40 and 50 miles an hour down the pipeline, and somebody'd call in something, you know. And then one day I was eating supper when I was mayor. The phone rang, and it was Jack. Russell, this is Jack. Yeah, what are you doing? Well, I'm up at the police station. They told me to leave. And I said, well, did you? No. Well, I think you ought to, Jack. I'm in there getting tired of you. So when I'm getting tired of you, call me at supper every time. So why don't you just leave and leave us alone for a while? The boy slammed down the phone, left. Doug Long called me and said, Russell, we're out of water. What do you mean we're out of water? Well, the tower's empty. How come it's empty? Well, somebody didn't do this. I said, well, hell, all you can do is run water back in it and tell everybody to be a while. Okay. So I never will forget that. Well, the tower's empty. Now, that was why somebody turned the water off going up to the tower. I don't know, pumping it out of the ground or wherever it come from. Now, Doug Long was a city engineer then. He sure was. We used to go on some city conventions. And I remember one time, it was acting silly. The chief of police at Euless had a name tag on. Blackest of Star, Chief Police Euless. And then I had Russell Johnson, mayor of Hurst. He got my tag. I always wanted to be a mayor, so I got his tag. I was chief, and he was mayor for a while. We was walking around there. Just silly things like that, When I was mayor, our office was up on Pipeline Road. So one day, I was speeding, and I deserved to get stopped. So the officer stopped, and he was very courteous. And I said, well, officer, I'm glad to see you're very courteous. We had a meeting last night in the council meeting, and I said, I'm mayor, and I just wanted you to know that you was very courteous. And he had that thing that made him nervous. He said, you mayor? Yeah. He didn't know whether to give me a ticket or not. But I said, yeah, go ahead and give me a ticket. I deserve a ticket. So he did. It cost me $10 for a speeding ticket when I was mayor of Hearst. I forget the officer's name, but it really befuddled him when I told him I was the mayor and he'd stop me. And another funny thing, I got stopped one day by the cops, and I'd cut, here's a road, and then I'd cut the corner to another road. And he stopped and said, sir, you're not supposed to do that. And I said, why? Well, if I remember right, you're the one that signed the ordinance that is against the law. I said, okay, I guess I did. Hearst owned about 5 acres over here in South Hearst. And so it's just sitting there. So the city council, and I was mayor then, the city council said, well, we ought to sell that and put money in the Hearst account. Well, okay. So you had to have public readings, public hearing. So, man, we had a public hearing on that, and every neighbor over there, no, don't sell that. Well, what do you want to do? Well, make a park out of it. So anyway, then my term was up, and then we had the second reading on it, and C.A. Sanford was mayor then. And the second reading, the council chambers was full. And he said, well, this deal started when Mayor Johnson was mayor. He might want to speak for it. So I looked around and said, no, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to speak against it. I'm with the people. C.A., I never will forget how he looked. He looked so funny. But I changed my mind. Everybody wanted to park, so they made a park. I think it's Redbud Park, I believe is the name of it. Well, you learn a lesson if you're in civic duty. You really do. And, the good Lord was on the earth, and they persecuted him, and they killed him, and he was a perfect man. And now you can imagine what they'll do to anybody. So you can't please everybody. If you please 51% of the people, you're doing good. I always like to think I please at least 60. I started with Charlie. We formed a partnership. He had about $10,000 in premium, not commission. We grew that business and grew it, and till we got, let's see, at one time there was 6 partners. So in 1976, I pulled out of the partnership. My oldest son and I did, and started Johnson Insurance Agency. And then when we made a living, in 1985, the business got so bad, the companies got where they wouldn't write anything, and we had to cluster. So my old agency and us and 2 or 3 more agencies went together where we could just have one reception room, one this, one that, instead of 4 or 5. So that's the only way we survived. That 85 just broke a lot of insurance agents. and business was bad, bad, bad. And then we survived that. As today, we got 3 or 4 different agencies, and we all operate as Texas Insurance Group. Bill Souter made more money out here than anybody, I guess. He was the postmaster for a long time, and then he got into banking, and then he got into buying houses and buying land and selling. Bob, I don't think got rich, but he worked for Bell Helicopter, and he was Hearst mayor for about 10 years, I believe. Bill was 20 years. Mayor Ward beat Bill 3 votes. I call it landslide Ward. Charles Schwarzenegger, yeah, he was on the council, I don't know, 30 years or more. He retired, I think, here. But he's a good man. I like Charles. Bob Holder was influential. He was in the building business, and his brother and them was old Hearstites. H.L. Merrill, he was influential. He was in the dirt moving business. He was in the excavating business. He had a bunch of caterpillars and earth moving equipment. And he was a good man. John Barfield, he's still a customer of mine. I've had his insurance since 1962. And he's built a lot of houses, and he's in development now. He's still land development. I went to his 9th birthday party the other day, and he's still going strong, but he's built a lot of houses. He's been influential. I don't know how many houses he's built in Hearst, a bunch. Superintendent of schools out here at the time was Newell O'Dell, and he was a tall guy, and he was an extrovert if there ever was one. So one day after Rotary Club, we were sitting around. He said, what we need out here is a junior college. And that's what started. So Dr. Ralph Butts and Dr. J. R.S. Bell, and I helped a little, I guess. They got things rolling, and 2 or 3 years later, we had a junior college. So that Amon Carter, at the time that happened, the mayor of Fort Worth and the mayor of Dallas, they were just bickering all the time, just a continuous fight. So the mayor of Fort Worth had to have an airport. Dallas had one, so they built one out of Amon Carter. When that was built, I was traveling some for Container Corporation, and if I was going somewhere, I'd get on an airplane in Fort Worth and then land over in Dallas, just up and down. And then they finally got together and built this airport in the 70s. I think about the early 70s, that's when that airport was built. Yeah, I was mayor when we voted that mall, Northeast Mall in. And the mall has really been beneficial to the city. But I don't know to this day, being honest, how I would have voted when they condemned a lot of houses to add to that mall. The houses was already there. There wasn't many houses when the mall was built. And they tore down, to build the mall. But I told Bill Souter, mayor, I said, Bill, I don't know. Well, it's good for the city. I said, yeah, but what about those people that's got their home? You're just going to take their home, say, we're going to tear your home down and build them all. Yeah? So anyway, they had their mind made up, and it happened. So I think the mall helped put Hearst on the city, because it especially when we got the sales tax, it got, I forget, it seemed like we get $2 or $3 million, I don't know, $2 or $3 million from it, or more, maybe more than that now, I don't know. But back then, I remember it was a lot of money, and that helped pay the bills. I've seen it grow. I should be a ultra rich guy. Some of the guys got rich by buying land, but I never could swing the deals. I had one that was born January 25th, 1954, and he's living in Athens, Texas now, and my oldest son is living in Grapevine, Texas. I have 4 grandkids and 12 great-grandkids. the, the grandkids did better than I did, didn't they? That I was fair and that I was honest. And I've always tried to be that way. Some people, if you're in the insurance business, some people think you're crooks anyway. You know, I never did make really big money, but I raised 2 boys, and we lived in a nice house and had nice cars and ate good. So what else is there to live? Over and all in all, I'm pretty happy. I've been happy with my life. You know, every once in a while, somebody you'll get down in the dumps. You'll have to have a talking with yourself. But I was pretty happy with Hearst. That it was a good place to live.